everyone, and welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Day Player. My name is Amanda Mack. This is an appreciation podcast for the incredibly talented actor and goddamn New York City superhero, Peter Greene. Each episode, I, along with a co-host, discuss one of my favorite roles of Peter's. I usually make sure my co-hosts or co-hosts, plural, are a lot cooler and funnier and smarter than me. And I've done it again. I've brought in Brandy and Ryan Koch all the way from Detroit. How are you guys doing?
Woo-hoo! We are so happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Doing great, Amanda. We did this before last year sometime. And the beginning of this year. Wow, see how time works, man. So yeah, it's good to be. Thanks for inviting us to do this. It's awesome.
Pretty much every conversation we have with you is great. So we can't wait.
Oh, same here. This is our third time doing this, like over the last few years. So
that's right. I got bronchitis landed on my vocal cord right after we did that first podcast at your house. I remember I lost my voice for like 3-4 months right after that. That was crazy.
Not necessarily because
not because of that. Just
podcast.
what was going on in life. Yeah, that's a crazy memory I have. Wow.
Oh my gosh. So normally I would jump right into talking about the film that I picked out for us, which is COYOTE RUN. But first, it would be very remiss to not mention the events of Monday afternoon. If you're listening to this, then you are several weeks into the future. Hello, hope we're all still here. But as of the recording of this, on Monday, it was June 24th. Peter Greene was walking through New York City in broad ass daylight, and there were some girls fighting that no one was bothering to break up. He walked up, got off his bike, I imagine. He had a bike with him, and broke up these girls that were just fighting in the middle of New York City. And then he proceeded to rightfully scorn the people standing around not doing anything. And I mean, it's incredible. Yeah,
incredible. Absolutely. The way he shamed people into enlightenment.
What kind of a man are you?
Yeah, hit all the sweet spots in life that it's the important things that you have to stand up for, and that made our hearts jump.
And who knew it would take Peter Greene to stumble across? I mean, you had 3 people videotaping that thing. And Amanda, I thought, I'm into internet fight videos. I don't know why I can watch them for hours. I thought you just sent me a fight video, and I was like, cool. This will be fun.
How does she know this?
And then there's Peter Greene, breaking the whole fight up. That was pretty epic, man. And like Brandy said, the way he shamed the guy, the security guard, what kind of man are you, man? Break it up.
Yeah.
Right.
And just the fact that came at a time when we were already praising such a person. He's clearly a badass, not just in his movies, but in
Absolutely.
life. That's important.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I've known for a while that Peter is awesome and just a good soul. So I didn't need the video proof, but it's nice to have it out there for other people to come around and see my, why I'm doing a podcast for him. Not only is he just incredibly talented, he's just a good egg. So, I honestly think I thought more about him jumping into that fight than he did, because when I saw him, kind of going towards them and attempting to break it up, my first thought was, what if they have a weapon? What if
immediately putting yourself in danger without even thinking of it.
There was a little bit of blood in the situation between the 2 girls, and he was putting his hands in there he didn't. You got to ask Peter Greene this question if you ever talk to him. How many times has he done that in New York City? That wasn't his first rodeo. He was getting involved like he had done that before. I imagine he stops a lot of fights if he comes across them.
Yeah, I imagine he stops every fight that he comes
Absolutely.
across. He just jumps right in.
All you got to do is lick that snake before he goes in, and people are like, nope.
So that's actually a perfect transition into the film that we are covering today. It is COYOTE RUN. I know there are some people who are probably going to wonder why I picked COYOTE RUN, parentheses, sworn enemies in Canada. So I want to explain myself, even though I don't really have to. But in the process of making this podcast, I had to watch 2 very emotionally sort of draining films of Peter's. It was Laws of Gravity and Clean Shaven. So I needed a balance. I needed something fun. I needed something crazy. I needed something that was just over the top. and I picked The Mask.
Well, you picked the right one. You picked the right one, Amanda.
Yes.
Yeah, I picked The Mask, and then I picked Coyote Run. So first off, we need to sort of talk about just how over the top this movie is. Everything that I say,
one-liner after one-liner, and we can openly admit that we had never seen this movie before.
Nope.
And part of what was great for us to watch it is we are complete nostalgia buffs. We love things that make us feel like we're in the 80s or the 90s. And it's very rare to even find a movie from that era that you haven't watched.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Right.
especially one of them.
It was a gem for us, and it was hilarious. It reads nowadays like a comedy more than, I mean, it really does. It was like one funny thing after another, just in terms of the epicness of the line after line.
Dude, I got a tagline for it. It's a classic 90s shoot 'em up movie with plenty of rain. There was a lot of rain in that movie.
It was.
And then a bunch of random boxes flying during the fight scenes. Like, if you look into like 80s and 90s action movies, when they're having a shootout scene, there's just random cardboard boxes falling all over the place.
Everywhere.
And this movie, Coyote Run, had plenty of all of that rain, cardboard boxes, all that stuff. So it was classic to me.
Classic.
The most important thing about this movie is that it knows what it is. And
Totally.
And it kind of actually reminds me of the Crank movies. Have you guys seen
Oh,
those?
Oh, okay,
Yes.
yes. Is that the one where he's like, Jason Statham is like doing it to like get his energy up? They're like doing it in the street. Is that like part 2?
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes. Oh,
Right.
Lord.
It's
Yeah.
funny that you remember just that part.
That's so unforgettable.
But yeah, so not content wise. The movies content wise are very different, but just the fact
They
that
know what they are.
Right.
Yeah.
They are very self-aware, and also I think all the actors are very aware of the movie that they're making too, because they all look like they're having fun. No one is trying to, have any.
Outshine.
Right. No one's trying to have their Oscar moments in this movie.
I'm just gonna say this. Peter Greene held this movie down like I imagine he does in most of his roles,
Oh,
Now,
yeah, absolutely.
I just have something to say. Does Peter Greene wear black eyeshadow for all his movies, or are his eyes really that naturally that deep and luscious always?
They're naturally that deep and luscious, and it's funny. I actually had this conversation with another episode too about how Peter always kind of looks like he's wearing eyeliner, just because of, I guess, how his eyes just sort of stand out.
I mean, I
from
love
his
it.
face.
Like,
Yeah,
love it.
I would feel more comfortable if we referred to Peter from here forward as Clifton. Can we do that? No,
I'm talking about the Peter Greene, the for real, the luscious eyes. He's got the best eyes ever. What was funniest to me, and I will just say this right now about the whole movie, the most hilarious part that literally made me laugh out loud was when the girl hops in the plane seat, is like, just sits on the lap of the pilot during the fight, the double helicopter plane fight scene.
And then start singing a patriotic song.
Right, like
Yes.
in his lap, like it's just no big deal that it's like, that's fine. I'm just gonna I got room here, it's fine.
So I do want to give a quick synopsis before we get too far into it and people really get lost. But I'll say this. There's a plot somewhere in there. I went to 3 different websites that had entries for Coyote Run on them, and they all had wildly, completely inaccurate descriptions of this film. And
In different plots. That's so
we found that issue as well. Looking for this movie, it took us a minute to find it.
Yeah, it was hard to find. I can find anything on the internet, and I did, but this one I had to definitely search for it.
So it starts in this very small town. At least it's a very small town, and there's this meeting that is happening between Clifton, who is Peter Greene's character, and there, I guess, some force that he is fighting over territory for. But in any case, while this is happening, Michael Pari's character, Pershing, is the town drunk. He lives on the outside of town, and but he gets brought in for whatever reason to be the deputy while the actual deputy leaves town for the weekend or whatever. And so while he's being brought into town, the stuff with Clifton is happening nearby, and it kind of all goes down in gunfire, basically, with Clifton's guys killing the guys that he was supposed to be having, I imagine, a civil conversation with.
This is where they shot through the floor?
Yes, that was cool as hell.
That was one of the coolest. I got a couple other really cool things, but we'll get to that when we get to that. That was one of the coolest scenes that I had seen in a movie. That kind of reminded me of the Boondock Saints scene where they come through the ceiling and kind of twisted around and shot all them dudes. These dudes just went right through the floor. Like they knew exactly where people were sitting. I thought that was clever as hell.
Well, yeah. And I thought I had missed what happened. Like, what was it, the thing that made Pershing all of a sudden care so much?
Well, what essentially happens is Pershing, he spots Clifton, and he recognizes him from their time.
Nam.
Yeah, well, they're both too young to be in Vietnam, though. So I don't know what war in Africa they were actually referring to, but I just pretended it was from the first Metal Gear, because everything that happens in the first Metal Gear takes place in Africa, and it's just sort of like an unnamed,
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So
yeah, we kind of assumed it was Vietnam, and yeah, I didn't even really think about that.
I think in one of the descriptions I found online, it said Pershing was in Vietnam.
Yeah, which makes no sense.
No sense. Yeah, you're absolutely right. In my notes, now that you're saying, okay. Anyway, so yes,
plot loopholes,
man.
Well, and that's why I brought up the fact that there were just so many inaccurate descriptions of the film online, because I read one that said he was in Vietnam as well, and I did the quick math and was like, wait, that doesn't check out at all. He's way too young. But yeah, so for my viewing, I pretended like they were both in Foxhound and that they had come back from Africa. So Pershing sees Clifton, who's orchestrating this whole thing, and they meet eyes, and then at that point it kind of becomes like this good versus evil type.
Yeah, then he finds out he killed the girl.
Yep.
The first girl. Yeah, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, and then a second girl comes into it and whatnot, and she'll be brought up, but the plot just is kind of all over the place. But the main idea is that these two are kind of playing a cat and mouse game throughout the movie. I do want to say that Peter gives great smug asshole face. There's that scene where he is riding by in the limo, like after everything has happened, and they both have seen each other and they know each other is alive.
Yeah.
And just the way Greene just looks at him, it's just I wish that was a meme or something, or like a GIF, like just smug.
We need to try to find that still frame and make it one. He's one of the kings of shaming people with facial looks, man. Like Brandy said, his eyes, the way they interact with his face, like he's one of those dudes that could tear you up with a facial expression.
And the way he kisses Sierra with his tongue in that one scene, it gave me chills.
Yes. I'm happy, Brandy, that you were getting chills at the same parts that I was. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's a great actor if you hate them. Like, if you can make me be like, oh God, you're so gross. That moment, how creepy and slimy.
I got my chills moment.
Honestly, when he kissed the snake, or licked it, he was like licking the snake. That gave me chills.
Yes. So that's another thing I want to bring up, because it becomes important in the end. So Greene's character has a fascination with snakes, and it's something that it comes up in just about every scene that he's in. He has a snake. There's some sort of talk about snakes or something in every scene. He has a couple of them as pets. I couldn't keep up with the amount that he had, because it seemed like he had a new one in every scene. But so he has a fascination with snakes, and if you did not know that he was the bad guy, you figure it out real quick when he starts kissing the snake.
100%.
Universal sign for a villain is snake licking. Yes, absolutely. If he's licking a snake, that dude, chances are he's the bad guy, or he's just he's got other things going on. Yeah. Now, you're talking about the snake, and I just got to bring it up. This was my chills moment. When you might not remember, maybe you do. It was a big scene for me. Pershing threw my man's snake up in the air and shot it. Like,
yes. In the graveyard.
I was like, what is going on? That was a plot twist for me. I said, now I'm on Clifton's side.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like, how dare
Like
you?
reverse John Wick, you know, like you can't take out a dog or a snake.
Okay, now too real animal territory, man.
Yeah, exactly. So that was near the end of the movie, but there is a whole section of just sort of a weird chase because the thing with Clifton is he has control over all of the sort of protective
Police
forces.
Force,
He's a mob boss.
Yeah,
pretty
and
much
like
is what I get.
the males of the town that kind of control shit.
I think we can all agree that there was a lot of ideas behind this movie, and they put them all in there. You know what I mean? Like,
it did.
All directions are go.
Yes, it did at a lot of points feel like there were a lot of things going on. Like I'm guessing at some point there was $15 million involved because one of the descriptions that I found online.
You read that same description I read. Yep.
Yeah, and so I had to. So I had not seen Coyote Run before this. I didn't even really know that this existed in his filmography.
Me either.
Yeah, no way. We've never even heard of this movie.
So seeing all the weird, descriptions of it, I had to watch it a couple of times to make sure I wasn't missing stuff because there was the thing about being in Vietnam, and then like the $15 million thing, and then on the actual Moonstone Entertainment, which is the company that put it out, they had a very different description as well. So yeah,
we watched it twice to fully understand it. If we're being totally transparent, we watched it twice. We started it, got almost done, and we were like, okay, we need to do that again,
right?
And make sure that we're getting.
And there
everything.
are multiple story after story. I mean, again, there's ground scenes, helicopter scenes. There's like a Smokey Death Vader scene where they're all in masks, like.
Well, I was going to bring up, because Amanda, we were talking about the Vietnam aspect. When they're in the back of the hearse, having that conversation together.
Oh, yeah, they're trapped in the coffin together.
They're talking about, I believe, it sounded like they were talking about Vietnam to me. Now, maybe that's just because I thought, because of the description that we read, that it was Vietnam. But they were talking about some kind of interaction they had in whatever war that they were in. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, they were talking about whatever war in Africa that they were in.
Africa, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then there was also a friendship conversation there. Clifton was like, you were my only friend, or something like that. I thought that was very touching.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out. Like, Clifton was kind of a weird one to figure out because I couldn't figure out when he was being genuine and when he was being, manipulating him. And I think that was completely intentional. I'm pretty sure it was to keep you sort of on edge about, whether Clifton was sort of misguided or just evil,
Yeah, and they go along with it, again, the way Peter Greene looks, man. He looks like you never really could read that guy, just based on his facial expressions and the way he is. So that would make absolute sense to me to have you guessing throughout the movie what his intentions are.
And really, it saved himself with Pershing over and over again because Pershing isn't the one that would to take him out.
Most of the movie is just sort of like a cat and mouse game, and they run into a couple of different characters that seem to be not under Clifton's control. They run into the detective who is just sort of just kind of shows up whenever.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah,
he had an interesting name too. I was trying to remember that. I did not write his name down, but the detective, he popped in and out like almost independently,
I'm guessing that the detective was there to take one of them in, but I wasn't really sure what the detective's whole motive was. I knew he was there to arrest someone.
I don't think he was sure either. He was like, let's kind of see how this plays out.
Now I know that there might have been because I don't know where it starts, but they end up in Canada. So in the beginning, when Pershing and Clifton see each other, Clifton immediately jumps into a plane and flies to Montreal. So I'm not sure if they start in Canada and they end in another place in Canada, or if they start in the US and maybe end somewhere else or end somewhere in Canada. So I'm guessing maybe the officer had something to do with taking somebody over the border. Some
kind of extradition, some international extradition type stuff, huh? Yeah, that could be.
And some of my favorite characters, some of my favorite side characters were the Tailors, the brothers that were the clothes tailors.
Yeah, they were so funny.
They were great. I love them. They were put there to just make me happy.
Yeah, to put a smile on your face as this crazy action, smoky, rainy shoot 'em up movie progressed. They were there to like give you something else to enjoy.
Yep.
Right. And they were Clifton's guys, but I couldn't figure out what their actual job was, whether they were actual tailors, like they made Clifton's clothes, or if that was just like a front. And they were like really his his strongmen. But
that's a major mafia thing, is to have a place that actually tailors your suits, and
they
two,
just own the shop.
They probably have their money put into it. They back the shop. It's Salvatore, he's been doing it for 120 years. That was kind of Russian. I'm sorry.
To the point where
I'm working on that.
If you treat people bad long enough, they'll rise up against you eventually.
I will make suit fit. Okay, sorry. But yeah, that's the kind of aspect I got from that. They were great. Yeah.
And also, I forget the other side character that I'm thinking of, and I'm looking dead at my notes too. Boot. Boot. So Boot is the character that has the biplane, or the crop duster, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Who sacrifices himself and lets the girl sit on his lap.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, he went out after having a great time. So, I mean, I can't even hate.
What do you think he dumped that powder-like substance? What do you think that was that he airdropped on all them dudes, all the bad guys, I guess you'd call them? What you remember that scene? What do you think that was? Some kind of cocaine?
I don't know if it was cocaine.
Okay. That'd been fun.
That's a good question. I was trying to figure out what it might have been, and actually the answer that I came up with was borax, but borax doesn't do that to humans.
Yeah, I was thinking anthrax, but I'm like, that would probably take out anybody, because they walked through the scene shortly after, and I was like, what could that have been?
Right.
Dying too, not passing out, but like dying.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, that was really weird.
Yeah, they tried to have that emotional scene with the two bad guys where the one of them realized his friend died, and then he screamed out and shot his gun like 8 times and then like keeled over. I was like, I feel nothing for you.
Well, I think they were trying to. Well, they hinted earlier in the car that those two were lovers, actually. So,
they did.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
So
you're really good at this.
I watched it a couple of times. I'm not gonna say how many times.
I still felt nothing.
No, it was. I mean, you weren't supposed to. It was totally played for comedy, of course.
Okay. Okay. Good. Now I felt something there. Yeah.
Yeah. It was totally played for comedy, and I laughed. I thought it was.
It is more of a comedy. Yeah. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah. There is no way.
Up action comedy.
It doesn't age well.
There's no way that this is. I mean, of course, it's an action film. They have planes and explosions and gunfire, but it is definitely. I feel like this falls into a comedy more than anything, and I think, and I think when they made it, they knew it was going to be a comedy.
And shout out to Peter Greene. The movie definitely didn't age as well as you, my friend. So you looked really good on that Saving Lives in New York City video Amanda shared with us.
But it was a gem to find and watch. Yes. Hilarious. Absolutely. I mean, just
reminded me of Beverly Hills Cop, a movie like that. There was constant shootouts, constant, action. It was
one thing after another. Yeah.
I want to jump to the end here, to the end of the movie, because while we have been going on saying that the movie has been very silly and not taking itself seriously, I feel like that's about 90%, 95, maybe 98 even % of the movie. And God bless Peter Greene, because he really is an amazing actor, and he pulled this off without looking completely ridiculous, even though I can't imagine what his face was when he read the script. But it was when they were they were in the
confession, Father God friend confession,
right? So
the world.
So at the end of the movie, they are all in this church. They've already turned on him, but the reason that they give for turning on him is that he was brought down by a drunk. Not that you treated me like shit, and now he runs back to the church where Pershing and the girl are, and he admits that maybe he wasn't the best boss in the world and that his guys are against him now. And so now it's him and Pershing teamed up to sort of blast their way out of this church that's kind of in this cornfield in Canada. And they come across these religious symbols, like, you know,
statues and yeah,
Christ on the cross and all that stuff. And Peter's character Clifton has like a PTSD moment, like just completely freaks out.
He goes crazy. Yeah. Oscar worthy.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing. That was the thing that gets me. Like, Peter sincerely committed to doing the scene and making it feel real and making it feel deep and emotional, even though the movie around it just
wasn't so.
Right. It doesn't lend to this moment,
right.
But Peter, he does everything super well and super committed. And it actually reminds me, he was in another film from the Asylum guys. Are you familiar with Asylum, like the production team or the studio Asylum?
Not other than like the name, you know, I couldn't name you any specifics, or no, I don't follow along. But yeah, I know what Asylum is. Yeah.
So what they'll do is they will rush out a movie that has either the same title or near the same title as a big blockbuster movie, and they will put it on Amazon in order to kind of look like the film that is in theaters that like is somehow on Amazon. And so this is kind of how they make their money. Back in, I want to say it was 2005, they did one for War of the Worlds, because that was the year, I believe, that the Tom Cruise version of that movie came out.
Yes.
And so I want to say Thomas C. Howell is in that film, is in like the Asylum version of it, and some other people, and then and Peter's in it as well. And I saw this film a very long time ago, like during late night or whatever, and I'm going to go ahead and ruin it. Peter's character dies, but he dies in this completely sincere and heartbreaking way, and you just get the idea that no one has told Peter that acting is way too good for the movie he's in. Like, it is just
you know, I imagine that's just the type of duty as he commits, just like he committed to breaking up that girl fight in New York City. You know, he doesn't know any other way, man. If he commits to your movie, you're getting 110% Peter Greene.
There are no shitty roles, only shitty actors.
Damn.
That's true. And
who said that? Andy Dwyer?
I mean, in like, there's no small parts.
You're right.
You know, like, no matter what part you have to own it, and he does that.
He absolutely does.
That's why we're here talking about him.
Exactly. And I love that Peter does that. I love that there is no difference in Peter's mind between doing a scene for a big Hollywood blockbuster and doing it for like a straight to DVD film. Like, he comes, and I've said it before in other episodes. He brings it. Yeah, he shows up to show out. Like, that is Peter all the way. And again, it's one of the things I love about him. And it was actually him in that scene in Coyote Run where his character is having the PTSD. Like, he just has this way of making you feel bad for him, even though that character hasn't really done anything redeeming up until that point. Like, it kind of feels like this very last minute ditch effort to make that character redeeming.
And it works.
And it does.
Kind of like, it's like the Devil's Rejects, man. You start to feel bad for that family, you know?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. You're like, well, they were horrible, but why am I feeling bad for them? Am I horrible? You know, that kind of thing.
Because he acted
it's
well.
So great. But hey, Amanda, if I can, I want to take it back to what you said about when he said he got taken down by a drunk, so he was no longer in power. That whole thing. I kind of like that, because to me, not that I'm super street, but in the streets, like, say you were to get, you know, as the leader of, say, a gang, you were to get taken out by the town drunk, you know, your crew would probably see that as a weakness and totally shun you out of your position and take it away from you, that kind of thing. So I kind of like that part about it.
Mob mentality, Ryan.
Hey.
Gotcha.
Hey.
Yeah, see, I would have never thought about that. You know, I wouldn't have never been able to pull that from from that
Yeah,
line.
you think about a gang, you know, there's no respect there. It's only led out of fear. So if they don't fear the leader as much after learning that he was taken down by a drunk, you know, then they would have the courage to rise up over him and take everything away from him, because chances are it'd be easy. You know, that's all led by fear. So yeah, that was a big part of the movie for me.
Yeah, that's incredibly insightful, and that's why you guys are here, because you have such great perspectives on things like this. So,
thank you, awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, if you haven't watched this movie ever, it's definitely a really fun place and time.
It is. It's a fun movie, and I think that's really all you really need it to be, and that's all it's trying to be. It's just trying to be fun and hilarious, and I'm not saying that everyone that watches it will appreciate it, but I think it is a movie that deserves a watch. And
if you're a Peter Greene fan, how you almost have to appreciate it, because one, he gives himself so much in that role. He gives more of himself than the movie's actually worth, in my opinion. But that's Peter Greene, like we discussed and you know, he just goes the distance.
It reminds me of Roadhouse, which is another classic, phenomenal movie. That's just like,
we could do a whole thing on Patrick Swayze. Dude.
I mean, It just is what it is. It just rocks for what it is.
Yeah.
Hey, I got also, if you have some time, I know you have a structure. I do have my favorite one-liners from the movie, because a movie like this has plenty of them. So I wrote some down. If you got time to fit that in there, that'd be wonderful.
I think one of the lines is, I have one that I wrote down, because it was the most striking line I heard in the film, and I
hope we wrote down the same one.
I'm almost positive we did. I'm gonna say it, and then you tell me if it's on your list, okay?
Okay. Yes.
I'd stab myself in the back to get ahead.
Oh, I totally thought about writing that one down. I'm not even gonna lie. I don't write much. My hand hurt, and I was down at the bottom of my paper. No, but I do remember that line. That's a good one.
Yeah, that was my favorite. I love it. But yes.
Well, then I'll read you my favorite then.
Yes.
You tell me if you remember it. Okay. Hell's coming, and I'm bringing the fire, says Pershing.
Yes. So this was actually in the trailer. I think that was the line.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. This is the line that convinced me that we had to do this film, because I was like, that's too great. Love it.
That's the best. Yeah. Yeah. It was good.
And this is an example of how nobody's a star and everybody gets great lines. One of the bad guys says, when you kill him, make sure you keep on killing him. I mean, like, you can't get better than that.
I got two Clifton lines too. God don't want you, and if God don't want you, neither do I. That's that. I was like, okay, that. And then Clifton also kisses the bad guy on the nose, says good night, baby, and then blows his ass away. I mean, that's amazing. That's a metaphor for the whole movie.
It's amazing.
Yes. And that's all the lines you guys.
That's all the lines. Those were like the worthy ones for me. They made me laugh, and I because we're gonna do a whole mini cast ourselves on Dylan McKay and all of his infinite wisdom, because there's so much of it, and there was just so many one-liners.
Some people
in Coyote
can
Run.
pull off good one-liners.
Yes. Well, that's actually perfect. We're going to wrap it up here, and I'm going to ask you guys to tell everyone where to find you, where they can hear your Dylan McKay minicast at.
Ooh, that one will be coming later, but we do have a 90210 minicast releasing in July. You can find that at patreon.com/The Kennedy Koch. That's Kennedy, just like the president, and Koch, Koch, show. Patreon.com/The Kennedy Koch Show.
And per usual, we have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the things. You can email us at the Kennedy Koch Show at Gmail,
at yahoo.com. Yeah, I'll take it from there, Brandy. Now, I mentioned the Patreon, which is a subscription based, and if you want to get a little bit of a little taste of the Kennedy Koch Show before you actually subscribe, because who the hell would subscribe to something they don't know about? Go to Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud and just search the Kennedy Koch Show, and you'll get a couple episodes you can check out. Dip your toes in the water. It's summertime. Get your feet wet. Then join us over at the Patreon link.
Yes, and thank you so much, Amanda, for having us.
Yeah, I had a great time, Amanda, and you're still one of my favorite authors because we love your book. We still can't wait for number two.
Yes. And we will definitely do this again soon.
Yes, yes. Thank you. It's coming. It's coming.